it, it seems to just slip me. I feel like I plan it every Sunday. I plan it out, and I feel like the whole week just goes by where it's like where it's like they don't want to do this, they want to do something else. So and I just feel like I don't know if I'm doing it correctly. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it just seems like everything I plan, they never want to do. It's resistance, and I feel like maybe structure, a little more structure would help them. But then I don't want it to be too much like school. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it properly, but I don't want to unschool, but I don't want to school as in, okay, let's do work from 9 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
I was hoping to get some insight,
some tips
into how to school, but unschool at the same time, if this makes sense.
Yes. Maybe one more person would like to share before I introduce our parents.
Hi, my name is Nicole Taylor.
Hi, good evening.
I started homeschooling last term, and with the scheduling, I started off a good 1 minute, and then as the other caller said, I lose track. So I have two girls, one is 7, the other is 10. The 10-year-old I can schedule, she's more a scheduled child, but the smaller one, sometimes I have to spend a lot of time with her on one subject. Sometimes she's not in the mood, and it could be a little challenging. So when I saw the link also, I said, yes, this is something I really need to hear.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nicole. Well, without further ado, let me introduce the parents who will be sharing with us today. One of the things I want to say is we are not necessarily going to share the Holy Grail with you, okay? We have families who have been homeschooling. There are different points in their journey, and so they are going to share what they have been doing, some of their challenges, some tips and insights. But I would want you to know that this, homeschooling is a very personal, sort of family-specific thing. And by no means this is about comparing. This is really about supporting, and so even as you listen to see, oh, okay, I can identify with this. Okay, yes, I can glean this, right? And so we really want you to feel encouraged and to let you know that we're all sort of going through different versions of the same thing, and so you're not alone, right? You're definitely not alone. And so we have 4 families today. We have, I will call her Bernadette Francis, even though she has Marie Bernadette there. So Bernadette, and what I will do, I will just call their names and I'll just ask each parent to share with us how many children they have and how long they've been homeschooling. And then I will dive straight in, okay? So Bernadette, can you share with us how long you've been homeschooling and how many children?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure to be here with you guys. As Fiona said, I am Bernadette, married to Sean Francis for the last 28 years. We have together 5 children. I began homeschooling about 19 years ago, maybe going on 20 now, when I only had 1 child. So I didn't dive in with 5. I started with just the 1, but we have 5 now.
Okay, thanks, Bernadette. And then I will go on to Josanne. Josanne, can you share with us how long you've been educating and how many children? Oh, Joe's, we're not hearing you. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Hi, Fiona, you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay, so I've been homeschooling. My eldest is 11 and they've never been to school. So I've been homeschooling since I've had children. Except for just one, she just went to school for 1 term at a private school. And we found that it was more of a social experiment. We found that, our educational philosophies were not meshing at all. So just had 1 term, and then from there we just took it on. Yeah. And we have 3 children, and yes, I have 3, and I also have a nephew who is at home with us as well. So there's 4 of them at home.
Thanks, Josanne. Next we have Tracy Ann King. Tracy, unmute.
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought I pressed the button. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I have 2 children. Their ages are 7 and 9, and I have been homeschooling formally for the last 2 years and going on 2 terms now.
Thanks, Tracy. And finally, it is also my pleasure as Corey Graham, homeschooling dad, to introduce himself to us. I really put Corey on the spot by placing him on this panel 2 days ago. So thanks, Corey, for being so gracious.
Yeah, thank you. Very true. In case you don't realize, I am a dad and not a mom. Wanted to say that to hit back at Fiona. I have a 5-year-old and a 5-month-old. I've been homeschooling, I guess, kind of 2 to 3 years, depending. Well, really, my 5-year-old went to school last term, kind of because of juggling work and that kind of stuff. What I saw with the curriculum actually scared me, so now we're homeschooling fully.
Okay, thanks, Corey. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight into this, right? What I will do, I will, there's certain questions I will direct to different parents and they will respond, okay? And so I'll start with Bernadette. Bernadette, can you just share with us, because I mean, you said you started off with 1 and then eventually it climbed to 5 children you were working with. So can you tell us what did your homeschooling schedule look like and how did it change over the years as you added more children to your homeschool or to your life?
Let's see how quickly I can do this. All right, so I started with 1 child. At the time, she would have been around maybe going on 6. So I would have had a baby in arms, 1-year-old, almost 1-year-old to deal with as well. My day with her looked like I began flexibly around 8:39 and way before lunchtime, we would have been through the curriculum that was required for a child her age. I would add that this child loved to learn. So she was a pleasure to teach, and eventually we evolved into her waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And by the time I was up and feeding her breakfast, she would tell me, I've done all my work. And that would be the workbook work that she knew that she was pre-assigned to do on a daily basis. So that was fun. And then life would have progressed. I'll jump to maybe when I had, let's see, when I had a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and then 5 and 4, 9-year-old, and then the 12-year-old. In those days when it was 5 kids, not all school age, just those 5 and up are really school age, the day still looked flexible where I would give my time from around 8:30 to midday, lunchtime, to schoolwork. So I was an at-home mom. I did have involvement in other things outside of the home, not full employment. And I would just give that chunk of time. We would do some group teaching. Where I would have started with a workbook system, where a child would know how many pages per subject area she had to do per day. Because of the varying learning styles of my children that I discovered as they developed, I had to realize I can't teach all my children the same way. It's not cookie cutter. So I had to find the way to teach that my children learned. And the 2 children that followed my first both had particular challenges when it came to learning, and one had challenges with his body and speech and all kinds of things. So I had to adjust. So my day did not look pretty. It was not sitting at desks with pencils and giving instruction and correcting in a book. I became very eclectic in my approach. When I hear of unschooling, I take my hats off to unschoolers because I think it's a fabulous approach, but I don't know that I can do it. But I have strong elements of home unschooling in my approach to how I had to teach these other 2 children. And then going on to when they were all of school age, the day did look a little bit more structured because I would have had, I think, some skill below my belt, dealing with my children, dealing with things that a young homeschooler the challenges a young homeschooler would have with maybe discipline issues and getting your children to respond to your voice. Those were settled. I kind of knew what I had to do. So the day was a little more orderly, but it did not look at all like school, classroom, school at home. Reading was done in the yard under the mango tree, and we would have oral comprehension. But what was consistent in my approach was that I had a chunk of time every day set aside to work with the children. You found as the children got older as well, they would have assignments that would take them beyond the lunch hour that they would do on their own. And then they can come and ask a question if they needed help. But generally my time with them was on a morning. I would say at this point that our family chose to integrate our children at secondary school level into a private school. They didn't deal with the SEA system. We simply prepared them to be school ready at Form 1. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, you did really well, Billette. Thank you very much for sharing. And I will, when I come back to you, I'll let you go like a little deeper, right, into what you'd have done. So I want us to hop along to Josanne. Josanne, you unschool. Can you share with us what unschooling means to you and how it has shaped your schedule with the children? Josie, unmute. Right.
Yeah, so what it means to me, I mean, so similar to the fact that homeschooling is different for everyone, so too is unschooling. So what unschooling means for me, it's a transfer of learning I took from being at what is referred to now as at-promise schools. Children who would have been pushed out of the traditional educational systems. And having been there for quite some time, you found that these children are exceptionally brilliant. It's just that they learn differently. What we would attend to at schools usually are the auditory learners, the children who would sit down and listen, but in no uncertain terms are they by any means the most brilliant, So what I started doing with my students, which I then transferred that learning to home here, is that I asked them at the start of the term, although unschoolers, they don't use the term, is that what do you want to learn about? What is of interest to you? What are we going to learn together? All right, so like for example, too, I position myself in that realm as well. What did I want to learn to do this term? I wanted to learn to ride a bike. All right, so they are helping me to learn about that. They want to learn how to do, I watched the big eldest daughter, she wants to learn how to do nails. My son, my eldest son, not my eldest son, he's in the middle. How old is he? He's 9, I think.
9. Yes, he is.
9?
9.
Yeah, he's really into do-it-yourself projects. Toys, he said, I remember he's saying, but you all don't need to buy any toys to me. I can do this myself, so he, he's working on some do-it-yourself drones and stuff like that, And then my little one, she is into gymnastics, So what the thing is with unschooling, what it means for us is building a living curriculum based on their innate interests. And based on that now, I then do my own research into, okay, so where can I show them now the math in there and the science in there and the literacy in there and all these STEAM subjects, all the science, the technology, engineering, arts, and math, so it's all encompassing. All right. I know other unschoolers with who are actually homesteaders, the children are involved in, who are actually self-employed and so on, they'll be involved in the business itself. So, they are very much involved in, they get to see all the invoices. And so the textbook really is brought to life. And that's the thing, we don't use texts. Worksheets may come, but after. Those are after the fact. So like, for example, if things are in the house, there's a busted pipe. And that's where, okay, so go get some 3/4, because we have stuff around the house. Go get some 3/4 inch pipe as opposed to a 1/2 inch, and there we look at, from there now, and they fix the pipe, right? But then we look at there's diameter, and they have to find the diameter, and from there you get to figure out, what's the circumference, so there's a lot that you can learn just basically through life, you know, yeah.
Mhm. Thanks, Josanne. And so I want to go next to Tracy. Tracy, tell us about what your schedule looks like.
I would say I kind of employ a floating schedule. So I do a timetable for the term. I slice in different areas, different subjects that we want to work on. And typically our day will start around 8:30 and finish like around 2:33. But the schedule is not rigid. So we have particular items that we work on in the morning because it's best for everyone to do it at time. For example, like certain skill areas that they're more receptive to.
Tracy? Okay, so Tracy's internet is out. So I will just go to Corey and then I'll come back to Tracy. Okay, so Corey, could you share with us how you work with, what does your schedule with Jairus look like? Corey, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay.
Now he's 5 and we're starting to formal schooling, but something I always did in general when I had time with him is we always did was kind of no technology for like the first half of the day and try to do things even as a toddler. Obviously that would be a kind of unschooling kind of situation. So we kind of sticking with that. We're using sunlight, so we do kind of, I guess, what we call the heavy work and the more standard kind of language arts and that kind of stuff in the morning, and read and then move on. But I generally, even in vacation time and stuff, we still kind of keep that kind of operation because I find once you get his brain thinking about something, then the rest of the day is like sometimes he won't even ask to watch TV or go on his tablet. It's like once he gets that jump start and that curiosity going, then it like just moves through the rest of the day. So that's kind of how we work. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, Tracy, you can go ahead. We heard when you talked about a floating schedule and there are certain things you do in the morning.
Oh, yes. So similar to what Corey was saying, there are certain skill areas that we work on in the morning because it's just better for us and better for everyone to do it at that time.
So like
And
what? Give us an
also,
example.
Like penmanship, at the beginning, my daughter needed a lot of individual attention with penmanship. So I will sit with her for like about 10 minutes consecutively, 4 days per week. And she would have been most receptive to do that in the morning. So we will start our day with that. When my son came in, we kind of more or less did the same because my husband, he does the math with them and he does that before he goes out to work outside of the home. So those things will have to be during that time. When I have to leave, like to go out to class or we need to go to extracurricular, that's where that's where we more or less loop. So we have like a loop schedule. So where we finish at that day, we will pick up the next day, and any other disturbance that with life or like an appointment here or there, it will just kind of stop there, and wherever we stopped on that day, we pick up the next day.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So that's more or less how the schedule is.
like. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just want to share a couple other ideas where scheduling is concerned. You find that sometimes families would choose to follow the term, so homeschooling families would follow the regular term system, so they may have 3 terms a year, right? Then you have other families. I met a couple of families who did like sort of year-round schooling. So they wouldn't take the big breaks like in August, you take 6 weeks, and they would school year-round. So it meant that they would take shorter breaks. So for August, they might take like a 2 weeks, right? And so every few weeks, they take 2 weeks off and then they'd continue. And so they do year-round homeschooling. And then I met a family, they do 6 weeks on, 1 week off, 6 weeks on, 1 week off. And that's how they homeschool. In July, August, they do take a bit of a longer break. And then there's another family, the mom of an autistic child, and she does 3 weeks on and 1 week off, right? This term, I am actually trying 3 weeks on and 1 week light. And so I work and homeschool, I lecture. My classes are generally in the afternoon to evening period. And so I spend time with my 2 girls in the morning. And so this term, what that looks like for me, I will be working with the girls 3 weeks. We will do areas like history, social studies, math, language, literature. But what I've also started to do, because one of my challenges with scheduling is that I felt like I was doing too much. I was trying to cover too much. And I kind of changed in terms of how I saw what I probably deemed as extracurricular, and they have become also part of our curriculum, our living curriculum. So things like piano and swimming, they are timetabled into what we do as school hours. And so this term, I'm not trying to fill up my time with additional things. Swimming takes some time to get there, to be there. We just do like 2 short sessions a week, but that's part of what we do. Same thing with piano, same thing with Spanish. You know, these are important parts of, especially for my older daughter who's now transitioning into Form 1. And in our lighter week, we will do more cooking and science experiments, and it will give me time to catch up on my assignments at work as well, you know. So this is what I will be trying this term. We'll see how that goes, right? So one of the things I think for homeschooling families, I think the advantage that you sometimes have is you do have the ability to be flexible. You know, if you feel as though a schedule really is not working for you, you can try to something else to see if it can work better for you according to what your circumstances are. So if you have very young children, your schedule would be different from if your children are older. So now that my first daughter is now 12 going on 13, it appears to me that it is not as difficult as when I had a 2-year-old, 3-year-old kind of running around the place and trying to manage a 7-year-old in between there, you know? So that's something to take into consideration as well, the stages of life. So if you have very young children, do not expect your time and your schedule to be very rigid and, you know, you go from 9 to 9:30 to 10 to 10:30 if you have young children. So another question I would have then for my families. Bernadette, you said that you worked with 2 of your children who were special needs, right? In the midst of your homeschooling. How did that impact the use of your time with your children who were not special needs?
So it's a good question. I have to stop and think because the way I taught really evolved with the presentation of the children's needs. So it's not like one day I decided this is what I'm going to do. So let's say there's the 2 particular children, the second and third child had real challenges with reading, with manipulating, understanding language. And even with speech, one of them challenges with speech. And so it just got integrated into school. So let's say I'm teaching reading per se. And so this is a challenge for these 2 particular children. There was no problem for the child that was younger than them to assist them with their reading because that was her strength. And so we focused on the children's strengths, and that's where we would encourage and build their self-esteem. And I just presented it. Everybody struggles with something. And so even the labels of what each child suffered with were never used in my home. It's he has a challenge with reading, or, you know, he has a challenge with spelling, or you know, he has motor skill issues, or she has comprehension issues or whatever it was. We didn't slap a label. We just worked together. So where it was curious because there was one child who could not read, and his comprehension skills were tremendous. But the child who could read had real challenges with comprehension. So you put this younger one with the older one, they worked together, and what came out was a beautiful product. Sometimes there was therapy needed, so you had to do the shuttle service to and from the help that you needed to get, and we would just pack up our books and equipment and whatever I needed to teach the others, so that I would, sit in the waiting room while one went in to get the assistance from a specialized teacher with his language. I would be teaching the others math or whatever else there was to teach outside. We just worked around it. For one, when this particular child began to be able to grapple with language and decoding language, his real interest was in birds. And this is where I borrowed from my unschooling families. So if he was super interested, super focused on birds, so we would spend lots of time at Asa Wright, and the book that he learned to read from was the birding book that foreigners use when they come to Trinidad, with big words that are hard for me to pronounce. But that's the knowledge that he wanted. So we just took a deep dive into all things about birds, and that's where he learned to read. He was not motivated to read Boyo and Kala, go by the river, or, whatever else Boyo and Kala does. He was interested in this particular information, and so he pushed himself to read and to write so that he could take field notes. We used to go on hikes and that kind of stuff. So he knew that as an adult, he would need to take field notes. So he forced himself, a child who has acute dysgraphia, forced himself to learn to write, because his first response to me was like, I'll use an iPad, Mom. I don't have to learn to write. I said, and the battery died. What would you do? And a look of horror came on his face. And then he picked up the pencil the next day and began to put effort into learning to write. So that's where I love to borrow from organic learning, learning along the way, learning as life gives you information. And so yes, this is how I've done it. I've reached out in the times where I realized I was teaching these children and I'm not getting through. So something is wrong. I asked questions. I got the help that I needed to remediate many of their issues, and I'm happy to say that they're all thriving, learning, and in some cases excelling in various areas.
Thanks for sharing, Bernadette. I want to ask Tracy and Josanne. Tracy and Josanne, you all went through phases where you studied and homeschooled, right? Could you share how did that look in terms of, did it impact your schedule? How did you homeschool and study?
Go ahead.
Yes, Tracy, go ahead, and then Josanne.
During the time I was studying, that was definitely where the schedule was definitely floating more, and we will have the loop more. I also had to rely on the support of my support system, my mother-in-law and my mother, to help with the children during those times. So they will be involved in like interest-based learning and talking with them and whatever they will do across there while I will work on projects, go to class and stuff like that. Sometimes even during the homeschool, what we will call our school time, those planned activities will kind of like take a backseat to allow me also to work on whatever I needed to get through at the time. And they will more or less do the same thing. They will help each other in whatever their interests are, and they will have their own individual time to discover whatever they wanted to do, however they wanted. Yeah. And the items like we didn't complete, like it will never be for one entire day that they are doing stuff like independently. So where I will have some measure of time with them, most times in the mornings, and I will continue with that, and then later on they will do whatever I have for them to do, or what they're interested in doing, to allow me that extra time.
Thanks, Tracy. What about you, Joseph?
Well, the thing is, I'm always in a learning environment, so I'm still in that environment. But what I would say is that I do have the privilege of support. Right. There was once a time when the last field of study was mainly on weekends. So I mean, my husband is here. Sometimes the grandparents, we can send them by the grandparents, or a grandparent will come over, you know, or an aunt. So yeah, and I work at night. During the week, I work at night. I work until 1 or so, you know, so from 9 to 1. So there wasn't, or there isn't any real challenge for me in that regard. But still in the environments, sometimes I would have the children in here and they learn alongside me, whoever is interested in whatever field I'm doing at the moment. You know, so yeah, they're either here with their tools, because I do a lot of like skills training as well, and academics. So yeah, it's whatever their interests are, I just have them around, and again, you know, they learn through life and they're seeing me studying. So they're very so that's the thing. Why I'm happy with the unschooling process is that I've never had to do any deschooling. You know, I've never had to absolve them of any notions of what learning should look like. So, or a time frame that it might have to be in, right? So, I mean, yes, in matter of fact, I do have a schedule, you know, just that we don't ever really stick to it, we're really very flexible. But I'll say this, within the schedule, when we do have our activities, we also have like 15-minute brain breaks. And I think that's very important for both of us, for me to just, you know, I mean, we love our children, yes, but sometimes, you know, and we need some space, you know, so 15 minutes after every session, you know, we have we have some little time apart, or sometimes even, well, during a session as well, we'll just have a break and just do some exercises. You know, although a lot of activities are body-based as well, they're kinesthetic, right? I'm all over the place, but because you know, my thoughts just flowing. But because I'm so accustomed to differentiated instruction, meaning that, you know, we use all the different types of learning styles in any lesson, you know, and what I found is that doing that, the children themselves now are able to explain things in different ways. You know, the same concept in different, not just explain, but show and well, demonstrate and you know, bring out whatever manipulatives that we have that to get somebody to, you know, another child to understand. You know, so I'm really happy about that. You know, it's not like, okay, well, you do understand yet, and then explain it to you again. You know, they also know, because they've seen me model different ways, you know, to do this thing. So the schedule, yeah, we start at 9 with our spirituality, and we end and we have, yes, we would have planned activities, we have excursions, and again, we learn really on the go and on the road, you know. So I mean, signs we see along the way, if we go to a little restaurant, the menu is the literacy, you know. Yeah, and things like, you know, being in a car park alone, you know, that's learning about elapsed time from the time that we go to the time we come back, you know. So we just use everything in life as a hook, as a learning hook, you know. Yeah, why does water run through the pipe? That's a science lesson right there, you know. Yeah.
Thanks, Jules. Corey, what about you? You also work.
Yeah, but I was actually enjoying what Josanne was talking about, because I see, while we use the sunlight, well, we just started using the sunlight really, but I kind of just use it as a guide. And my son actually just asked me the other day, how does water run through the pipe? So what I do is I keep a list of research questions, we call them, and he'll say, put this on the research list, put this on the research list.
Yeah.
But what happens is that you could take that research list, and if you're having trouble, difficulty getting across a particular point, you can now use something that he's interested in. So a good example of this, and because we were schooled, like we think in one way. So in the book it said, get toys for, I let him do some sorting toys in different ways. And I was there, I don't want to go in that toy box, blah, 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 etc. But he loves Hot Wheels cars. There's a Hot Wheel game that he goes outside and he talks to the other boys, and it's like they're adults. Like, we did this, we did this, and that, and we got this car and that kind of stuff. And because I so focused on the book said toys, and I got going to sort all the toys, I didn't realize he had a bunch of Hot Wheels cars that are perfect to sort and kind of tidy in a small area with a baby and all that to do. So sometimes in terms of the scheduling, sometimes we kind of put ourselves in the way of, it has to be some formal class that the teacher walk in with a pretty box and open it. That's how sorting has to be. So that's difficulty. In terms of me scheduling, to be honest, it's been difficult, but I kind of work in the night. I also work with people in other time zones, so that works out. Um, but well, we won't speak about my sleep hours; they're ridiculous. But for a period of time, to get some things in place, I really work a lot in the night, and then during the day I will look for hooks, especially when he was younger, maybe not be able to understand. So for people with toddlers, especially, one of the things that's suggested is, you just, when you catch them for 15 minutes, then do something in that 15 minutes and then let them go. If you catch them again, do something in that 15 minutes and let them go. But you also gotta let yourself go and not be so, why he not learn, why he, and all of that. That's important. I mean, sometimes though, when things come up in the day and I just have to run to do it, sometimes I used to feel bad because I had to use screen time to do it. But when he spent the time in formal school, what I did with because I'm into technology, so I figured, all right, if I'm going to have to use screen time, I'm going to be in total control. So he has a tablet that I could turn off at any second. I could turn off any particular app on it at any time. And then the TV, I have to put the video on. He never has YouTube in his hand, clicking on whatever he wants and so on. So, well, my theory is, if he starts something, he has to follow it to the logical conclusion, and so on. But I'm no scientist or anything, but what I found is, especially, there were basics. So if I had something to do, I would look for something based on phonics and that kind of stuff. And last term when he was in formal school, the teacher said he was one of the best. Well, she said the best boy, and there were only a couple girls better than him. I don't know exactly what I meant, but I think boys are anyway. So I do think in terms of balancing work, for me, like those 2 hours in the morning, if you really could catch them with a hook, sometimes it pans out over the rest of the day. Sometimes I sit amazed and he's there for an hour playing with two toys and so on. Kind of, it's almost like you give him a jump start to the day, and now his brain is going and he goes off and does his stuff. And then if you have to use screen time where you get a call that's very intense and you have to deal with it, like having that list of YouTube channels or whatever which teach phonics, which teach this, and that research list that I talked about, and you put that on, it really does expand. And once you have a list of things to research and you go on YouTube, you'll be absolutely amazed at the kind of content that's available. And then once he watches that, then he's gonna come to you and you're gonna have a talk. If you put it on and then you have to leave the house, then you can have a talk and so on. All the while learning is continuing. And then if you're following a formal schedule, so a good example is last week he was supposed to do parachutes, and I opened the book. Is this pretty thing like this is how to do a parachute? It's like, yeah, we did that already. Yeah, we did that already. So in terms of scheduling, I think you do need some focus time as well, everybody. talked about, but then there are a lot of other areas outside of that focus time that you could use to continue the learning and to ensure that it keeps going, even though because of where your day looks absolutely messy. Doing numbers during bath time or in the bath, sometimes he remembers them very, very, very well. So the last thing I will end on is he was interested in understanding, I think, tens, or no, I wanted him to understand tens. So I said, like, let's build 100-mile highway where each mile was like 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, 80. I never completely finished the highway, but he got the idea, and I never had to show him in any way. Like, I never had to formally sit down and tell him this is 10, 20, 30, 40. He just got it that one day in, half hour, So, yeah.
Mhm. Thanks for sharing, Corey. I just want to share just like a little bit of a recap of some of the things that we've spoken about, right? Josie, you want to go ahead, Josie?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something. What I think I heard a concern of a number of parents were, with the schedule, is my child going to fall behind, and I would tell them to seek solace in the fact that, a lot of the stuff on the curriculum not even necessary, so, like things like a fronted adverbial, you're not going to need to know about that in life. You're not even going, there's quite a number of things you don't really need, that's why, you trust the children. So, well, I trust the children with their own education, really, and to learn really what they want to learn, and they will figure it out along the way. And I think that, is to really try to create the environment to make learning, them to want to learn. And what I found is that asking them, what do you want to learn? That's half my job done there, in terms of I don't have to go motivate them, to pick up a book or to go on, because they will go and do their own research, and again, with the time, because there is no limit. No, now my focused attention with them ends at 3, but I mean I'm still there. But the thing is with them, because they don't have the understanding that, okay, learning ends at 3. I see them, they go on to do their own thing, they're still learning, and what I found too, in terms of what helps me, I have taught them to help me, by learning how to cook, learning how to clean, and all those different things that would take time, that you feel that you must get done, if it is that, I have to sit down with these children with this, when am I going to get a chance to cook? When am I going to get a chance to do the laundry and all, I incorporate them in all of those things, and I remember I was telling you, Fiona, about how we had started this thing with, what we call chores. What are chores? We call services. So the children came with the name of a company, right? I mean, a maintenance company. So each of them have their services to do, and we came up with a fee for these services. It's minimal, but they came up with it, and so yeah, they get a wage, a weekly wage. And what I want to take it on from there after is to show them how to do NIS. Although I tell them I ain't paying you NIS all, but they'll at least see, how it goes and what's the functionality of it. Instead of waiting until secondary school, and still in secondary school, I don't think that's taught though.
No.
Yeah.
It's not.
And these things are very important, to learn how to do your taxes, and to show them mortgage documents, and it's just you just learn through life, and life itself is not a distraction. It's a learning point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in terms of some of the little tips I wanted to share, for those of us who might be transitioning children, moving from sort of conventional school to homeschooling, you will find that there's some natural things you will see, and we may be tempted to see them as challenges. So I think, I can't remember who shared at the beginning. Might not have been Natasha, but I know one of our parents at the beginning shared that it's a bit of a struggle to get the children to follow the schedule. Or sometimes you may feel like, the time is just passing and you're not sure what you're getting done. you know. It is according to what approach you want to take. You know, sometimes you may be really tempted that you want to have a very rigid schedule of the traditional subjects, even though, you know, you really want to do like traditional school at home. But sometimes you may lean more towards that because that's what we know for those of us who went to school, you know. But you will find that as you work with your children, because in the beginning, I was very conventional myself, but what you find as you work with your children and they are more in a homeschooling type environment, they become they become a living part of the education process. And sometimes a little bit of the resistance you may find will be because there are things that they want to do. You know, they may want to draw some more, or they may want to read some more, or when you go into the kitchen, they may want to follow you there. So my younger daughter is she's very reading heavy, but she's also very hands-on heavy. So if she knows I am going to the kitchen to cook and she's doing penmanship, she will put down the penmanship and follow me and say, can I make that salad for you, please? And she has her own knife and she has her little board and she wants to start to chop up things. And so I've stopped telling her, no, yes, you come, because there will be a point in time when I want her to do it, you know. I didn't think it might have been at 6, 7, 8. You know, so sometimes they really help to challenge the way that we think about education. And so that's one of the things I want to share. I remember a little while ago when, you know, Bernadette and I had done another session, she talked more about having a routine as opposed to like a set cast in stone schedule, right? And that is something that we can consider, having a routine, meaning that there are things that we want to get done. And we know what those things are. We know what some of those skills are. And so I think it might have been, I can't remember again, if it was Natasha who said, you know, you may have what you planned out for the term, but be flexible in what that could look like, you know, and you probably will still meet your goals and the things that you want to do. It may not just be in the rigid manner that you may want to do it, you know, because life is an education process as well. So as Josanne rightly said, sometimes being a part of what is happening in the home, and this is our next schedule, I think we'll talk a bit more about this, managing homeschooling within the context of life, you know, because homeschooling is a part of life. We do have to cook and to clean and to do a number of other things. And you know, sometimes we might think, oh my goodness, I have done nothing with the children. But have we done nothing? Or is it that we sometimes may need to kind of broaden education a bit, look at life as education and involve them in, you know, that more holistic approach to education, which will involve all of these other things, including what we may see as formal subjects, you know. So to think about that as well, and to really also allow for the interest. When you work with your children and realize out of a system, you will begin to see their interests. Their interests will start to come to the forefront. They will begin to, you will begin to see what they love to do, you know? And so for me, it has meant in this season, allowing my older daughter to begin to teach herself anime. And sometimes that, I mean, during the coronavirus period, she would just be there for hours. And so sometimes I would just leave her, you know, because she's teaching herself and she's loving what she's doing and she's becoming very good. And I'm like, you know, well, as opposed to, you know, you're saying, let me go and pay for some formal lessons for you to go and do this. And you spend hundreds of dollars when she's doing her research, she's learning the different people in the field and she's looking at the tutorials. I don't have to go and choose the tutorials for her. She's looking to see who's the best with the different people. And so then you realize that they're beginning to take responsibility for their learning. And that is so important because if we can teach them to love learning and to take responsibility for learning, then that is half of our job done as homeschooling parents, you know, and as they get older, they will be able to be more intrinsically motivated. And there'll be less sort of running them down to maybe do things that they're not so interested in, you know, and sometimes it may be a fight with us. We may think that we want them to do certain things, they should do certain things, but they may not want to do those things. And so sometimes that's where the conflict may come. Or sometimes we think they should do certain things at this particular time. You must be reading by 5. because in primary school, you have to be reading by 5, 6, you know, you must be writing by 5. And so there are all of these massive skills we want them to have by 5, 6, 7. And when we don't see those skills in them, we become frustrated, you know. I think one of the things, and I will stop speaking and just allow Josanne and Tracy to just share some final tips. You know, one of the things we can consider, according to how long you're homeschooling for, it can be for a short time, it can be for a long time. But think of the period as everything doesn't have to be rushed and accomplished now. You know, you have your children with you for a portion of time, and you can take that time. Yes, thanks, Marsha. You can take that time to work with them. Bernadette, you had something you wanted to share? Marsha said she saw your hand up. I don't have on glasses, so I'm not seeing as well as I should.
No problem. I wanted to add to something that but both you and Corey would have touched at it. Well, I think all of us maybe would have touched on it. Integrating education and teaching into life and into your daily schedule, and being flexible and listening to your children. I recall one instance where my daughter was having a real challenge with fractions, and she was frustrated and I was frustrated. And so sometimes, yes, you have the schedule, and I said, you know what? Let's go in the kitchen. You want to make cupcakes? Yes, I want to make cupcakes. Come, let's make cupcakes. Well, you know what I did? I doubled the recipe. And I said, you're in charge of the recipe and I'm going to put the ingredients in. Well, I see Josanne smiling because she knows that's a fractions class.
Yeah, ratio. Yeah.
Yes, and she did it all in her head. So she just, you know, doubled the fractions, half cup of this, quarter cup, 1/3, 1.5 cup. And when the cake was baking in the oven and we had finished washing up the wares and waiting for the cake to come out, so I said, I thought you said you couldn't add fractions. So she said, Mommy, I can't, I really can't. I said, and then I took the recipe book and I showed her. I said, but you just did it mental math without paper. And she's like, oh my gosh, I did. And so involving them in the daily things of life. As you begin to homeschool, I know as a new homeschooler, it may seem very challenging, but it will become a part of your life. You will have a homeschooling mindset where, yes, even if like me, you follow a curriculum, but everything becomes a learning opportunity. You could be on vacation and you're still educating your children. Because they will begin to see that learning is fun and the world around us is there wherever we go and there's something to learn. Corey talked about the curriculum told him sort, and he didn't really want to take out those toys, but you know, you could go and do laundry and sort by color. Put the whites, put the blacks, put the blues, put the reds, and you're getting your laundry done. And you're teaching sorting. And so you make it a life skill. You make it, you want to translate the skills that we would have been taught with a workbook or a textbook into how does this make sense for me? Why is it sensible to learn this? Translate it into a living classroom where they can see, okay, I will need to learn to sort, and this is why. And you know, your kitchen is a myriad of teaching. There's a myriad of teaching tools right in your kitchen, right in your house. You don't have to go out and buy lots of equipment. And you know, just go, ready, set, go. And everything is a learning experience. Everything around you is a learning experience. I just wanted to add that.
Yes, yes. And I think even if you're a bit of a more conventional person, just something as simple as bringing more dialogue, like Corey would have said, you have a research list, you know, just something as simple. I mean, it's actually a philosophy among homeschooling people, you know, the whole process of narration and the Socratic approach where you allow for questions and dialogue. And so it's not just them writing notes, you're speaking. Even that simple approach of bringing that into your conventional subjects, if you're more of a conventional person, makes a world of difference in terms of helping with children being resistant to just doing textbook work. You speak to them, talk with them about what they're doing and why it may be important. You know, social studies for my daughter and I has become like an experience, because I tell her, this is life we're talking about. You know, this is not textbook work. When you're talking about social studies, we're studying society. When we're talking about the family and budgeting and governance, We are talking about what we are doing around us on a daily basis. And so now when the news is going on, I see she's listening to the news differently. When we're in church and the pastor is preaching, I see she's listening to what he's saying. And then I know inevitably some kind of question will come, because we're seeing even what may be so-called conventional being related to real life. And I think for us to be able to break out of the mindset of just teaching them subjects, this is not subjects, this is material for life, you know, and so converse with them, that can be helpful. So the final thing I want from our families who would have shared, if you were to leave a gem of advice with parents where their scheduling is concerned, what would you share?
Hi, I think what you just said, and even like what Bernadette shared, kind of encompasses everything. But what I will add to that is, like, you know, you always seek to do right by your children, and all these things that will eventually fall into place, and they will eventually get all that is needed. And also to give yourself the freedom and give yourself the authority to author your own life and that of your family, and what is based on what is needed for you and your family and not anyone else. And that is something I kind of learned and borrowed from one of my favorite homeschool bloggers, writers, Judy Bughat. And it is really, I think it's kind of like the be all and the end all of what we will all want for ourselves and our families. And, you know, we're not bogged down by a system or by typical schooling hours or schooling day, that certain things must occur at a particular time. And when you have that freedom and authority, and that, you know, because we would have chosen homeschooling to achieve these things. So we just do what we know that is right. And we have that authority to do that, to author our own lives.
Thanks, Tracy. Any tips, Corey?
Yeah, I think giving yourself grace and space, and I get understanding that learning process, and something that was said, because you're the teacher, you know where your child is weak, and you know could meet them on vacation somewhere, and at that point when they're really ready to learn, like your birds example, Bernadette especially, and so on. So that was a really powerful thing in going through homeschooling. And I think we talked a lot about scheduling, but one thing I think about a lot, having been in the actual school system and being into technology, and having an idea of what maybe the iPhone 20 will look like, the iPhone 21. And when I say it like that, people get it. So, you know, your daughter or son will be, you know, 16 or 20 or whatever when the iPhone 20 comes out. And that piece of technology is going to do something so amazing, and probably do adverbs and all these things. But is your child going to have the creativity and passion and desire to really make the world? Like, you know, that's my area, and in terms of things that people are talking about and things that people are actually doing right now. You know, like all the richest men in the world right now are spending all their money trying to go to space, and us in the Caribbean, we don't know why. We have no clue. We're not even we're nowhere close to that in terms of education and thinking. So your daughter being able to go and learn animation on her own, or even she could go on NASA's website and learn rocket science on her own, and that kind of stuff is such a powerful thing. When you look at it like that, like what can your phone do today, and what will your phone be able to do in the next 15 years? Just think about the phone. Don't even think about anything else. That will really start to open your mind to what you're doing today in your homeschool journey.
Thanks, Corey. What about you, Jules? Any little tips or nuggets?
Yeah. You hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Yeah, just to ipsative assessment. So going back on what I was talking about, where, you know, you feel a child need to catch up. This is not a competition, or rather it's a competition with yourself to become better tomorrow. You know, to be better at something than you were the day before, the week before. You know, so really, yeah, that's just it. So it's not a matter of measuring up a child against the rest of the class or even another sibling, but, to promote in them the confidence that, you are your only competitor,
Thanks, Rose. Bernadette.
Well, what I would like to add to what everyone has said is, remember, it's not a race. No one cares what the child learned when they were 5 versus when they were 8 versus when they were 12 or when they learned it. Once they know it, when they come out, when we launch them into adulthood. So it's not a race. As Josanne was saying, don't compare. Do what fits well for your family as pertains to scheduling. Everybody's family is different. The dynamics are different. The levels of support that we have within our family structures are different. So do what works well for you. Once learning is taking place on a daily basis, on an ongoing basis, you're okay, because schooling, education occurs where teaching and learning take place. So if the child is learning, that's what's important. That's what education is about. So you want to ensure learning is taking place, make sure it fits your family. So for me, when Fiona would have spoken about families who go with the school term of the Ministry of Education, my family taught, let's loosely say, we teach all year. But then if I had a difficult pregnancy, there were lots of half days inside of there. Half day is better than no school at all, because no school at all is chaos. No learning is chaos. So when I had a young baby, those first couple of weeks, that might have been vacation. But then we go right into half day school, because half day is easier than no school. We took vacations in September when airfares were cheap, like half price, versus trying to take vacation in August when everything is booked and at its peak. Just do what fits well for your family and ensure that learning is taking place. Get connected with a homeschool community. Don't homeschool in isolation. You'll frustrate yourself. Homeschoolers are wonderful people, and we are here to encourage and support you. So get connected and have a community of like-minded homeschoolers around you who can support you, answer questions along the journey.
Thanks, Bernadette. And so actually that's the note I want to end on. This is a journey and it's a process, Education is not something that just, and I think the coronavirus is showing us that maybe it is a little bit difficult when we just associate learning with a school building. And so now when there's no school building, some children are struggling a bit because there's not this building to motivate them that they're in school to be learning, but education is a journey. It is a process. It's lifelong. It doesn't stop. Okay, I've done my time with school. That's it for education. No, so homeschooling is a process. And, sometimes you have to, Josanne used the term de-school. Sometimes you have to detoxify a little bit from the tradition. And our children will help us with that. They will help us, and encouraging them to share more and listening to them more. Not silencing their voices, which is sometimes difficult because, sometimes school can be a very silent place, but listening to them will also help us in the process. And so I want to thank everyone for being here today. I want to particularly thank Tracy and Josanne and Bernadette and Corey for being so gracious and sharing, from their lives. For me, I would like this to be part 1 of, looking at homeschooling, life and scheduling. And so in maybe a couple weeks or so, again, we can do part 2, where we talk a little bit more about, as I said, more life and homeschooling, how you fit homeschooling into all of the other things you have to do with life, not just your content schedule now, but life in general. Some tips for maybe what some people may say, how do you handle it all? Sometimes you may get up and you start washing and cooking and the whole day has gone, and a week might have passed like that, and like, oh my goodness, I didn't do anything, and sometimes that happens, sometimes. So how do you not let that happen sometimes? So we can talk a little bit more about life Thank you very much, Nicole. Yeah, and I know I've heard a lot of parents say that sometimes, you know, you think you're going about it the wrong way. But as everyone would have said, there is no wrong way to home educate, you know, because it is something that it's very personal. And so one of the things we do encourage parents, and I guess I will end on this note. We are here to support each other, but we are not here to create carbon copies of each other. We are here to give you tips and tools to help you, as Tracy said, to feel confident in building your own homeschool, knowing that you're part of a community that supports parents who are interested in their children and who, you know, have a vision for how they would like their children to be educated. And so that's what we're here for, to support you as you work with your children and to share tips and encouragement. Okay, so I want to thank everyone. I did record the meeting, so it will be made available for you to just go over it and, you know, take your little notes if you need to do that. And look out for another message. We will have another session in a few weeks' time, God's willing. Okay, yes. Right. I don't know if anyone has any one burning question. We can take one burning question and then we'll wrap up. I have class in like 15 minutes. See, flexibility.
Hi, good night. I was just wondering how I can get a copy of the recording tonight.
How did you hear about? Did you hear about
From
Facebook?
Reverend Kwame? No, through Reverend Kwame Kamau.
Okay, I can help with that. So I will send Kwame the recording and you'd be able to get it.
Okay,
You can
great.
just link with him. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bernadette.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. All right, everyone.
In terms of burning questions,